If I were a prepared person, I would at least know the titles of the books that I'm currently reading. Hey everyone, it's Lori, and I am here today with my July reading wrap up. Now, July was apparently my worst reading month in a really long time, um, and I actually only finished 4 books. So I think in this video I'm also going to talk about the 3 books that I'm also currently reading and trying to finish up, but just I'm not close enough to finish before the month of July is over, which is sometime tonight. So I'm going to start with the biggest book that I read this month, and that is the 4th book of the Wheel of Time series, The Shadow Rising. I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 5 stars. Um, but I will say it felt a lot longer than the first 3 Wheel of Time books, which aren't exactly short books to begin with. I checked out a copy from the library, and I think it was 800 ish pages, and it just had the teeny tiniest print inside. So, unfortunately, I did not finish it within the amount of time I had it from the library, so I ended up finishing this one again on an audiobook that I checked out from the library. So I had to finish more of this book in audio than I did. I think book 3 I also had to finish the same way. Apparently, 3 week checkouts and one renewal doesn't seem to be enough. But since our library that I check these books out from is an hour drive away, sometimes I have to return them when I can go through the town. So um, I thought this one was really interesting. So the Shadow Rising took the story so much further. I'm still very much appreciating the Rand storyline, but I particularly loved the Perrin storyline in this book, and Perrin is my favorite Wheel of Time character. Um, Funny story, I was listening to the audiobook because I didn't have the book anymore, and I was a little bit tired, and I kind of dozed off um, a little bit, and I turned it off because I was too tired to go on. But the next time I went back to it, I was not sure what had happened at a very critical scene with Perrin. So I had to go back and re listen to a large chunk of what I had apparently been kind of in and out during, just to find out what had happened and if there were any major deaths in this really important kind of battle scene that was going on. So, not a good time to kind of doze off during an audiobook, but that is one of the challenges of listening to audiobooks is they are easy to fall asleep to. So, yes, I did finish the 4th book of the Wheel of Time. I'm probably going to take a break right now. I won't be reading book 5 in August. I'm thinking probably I might pick it up towards the end of August and read it in September. Just life is crazy, and I'm not going to have time for a book that thick. So that was the biggest book I read. Next up, I guess I'll talk about the middle grade book I read. So I read the 2nd book of the Crowns of Croswald series. It's called The Girl with the Whispering Shadow by D.E. Knight. The author and the publisher sent book 1 and book 2 to me to read and review on Goodreads. So I do have a review of this up on Goodreads. And they are fun stories. I think she's working on book 3 now. They're the story of a young girl named Ivy who is an orphan and goes to a magical school and finds out that she's basically kind of a chosen one sort of thing. It's very Harry Potter-esque without being a copy of Harry Potter. I like the author's imagination. She does a great job of creating unique magical creatures in a unique magical system and a unique magical game that comes into the storyline in this book. So, I think I gave this one 4 stars. It's hard for me to remember, but they're very enjoyable middle grade books, so they are pretty fast paced and have younger protagonists. But I've enjoyed both of them. And I don't know if either of my girls have finished one yet. I know Eva at least started the first book, but then she might have gotten distracted. The third book that I'm going to talk about is Teaching from Rest, A Homeschooler's Guide to Unshakable Peace. This is a teeny tiny book, and I feel like I always pick blue book covers and they always throw off the light on my camera, but it's only 80-ish pages long, but it is full of so much really good kind of philosophy of homeschooling for homeschooling moms. So I did do an entire review for this, so I will link it in the cards up above, but this is a 5-star read for me whenever I read it, and I need to remind myself to read it more often. And then the other book that I finished this month was called The Cat Who Knew a Cardinal. And this is a book by Lillian Jackson Braun. We were going on kind of a bit of a road trip, and so I was picking out some audiobooks from the library app for our trip, and this was one of them that I saw. Now, I read a whole lot of Lillian Jackson Braun's The Cat Who books when I was in middle school. I distinctly remember reading a whole bunch of them in 6th grade. I did not realize they continued on. I did not actually realize how old they were. I kind of thought they must have just been something that happened in like the late 80s when I was in middle school that I picked up on. I think I had gotten a recommendation at the used bookstore that my dad used to take me to, and I think that's where I got the first one. Not really totally sure, but it's been a long time since I've read one of these books. So basically, the storyline of these books is that there is this man named, his last name is Quillerin, but everybody calls him Quill, and he has 2 Siamese cats. And one of the Siamese cats is a fairly normal cat, but the other one has like this talent for sleuthing almost. So Guy and his cat solve mysteries. So it's very fun. I had never listened to an audio version of them because, of course, audiobooks were not a huge thing back in the 80s. And I guess the first of these series of books was written, I think it was maybe the late 60s. The author wrote 1 or 2, but I think just 1, and then continued the series in the 80s, and it actually continued into the early 2000s. I'm not exactly sure where in the series The Cat Who Knew a Cardinal was, but it was one that was published past the time when I would have been reading them, so it was a new story to me. I enjoyed the audiobook. I think the girls enjoyed it too. It's a very fun little story. They have a small town community theater production of Shakespeare going on at the beginning, and then the director, who's also the high school principal, ends up dead. So we're trying to figure out who the murderer is, and of course, with any mystery, there's kind of false trails and all these things, and it all wrapped up really well right at the end. And I would say the ending is really right at the end of the book. I think we found out kind of who done it in the last half hour of the audiobook, so there wasn't a whole lot after that. But it was a fun story, and it made me kind of think I might have to read some more the Cat Who books, because I just really enjoyed kind of a blast to my own personal past of reading that, and I think I gave that 4 stars as well. I have been reading a few others, so I thought I'd mention those now. I'm at different points in all of them. One that I am not very far into and that I've been trying to read for most of the month, but haven't made a whole lot of progress on, is The Moviegoer by Walker Percy. I've read Love in the Ruins. I actually listened to the audiobook last August, I believe. And I really enjoyed that, so I thought I'd try another Walker Percy. This is one that's on my Kindle. I started it at a swim meet, and then I just have been, I don't know what I've been doing. Been trying to keep my mind and driving people places. You would think I would have gotten through more audiobooks as much time as I've spent in the car. But so I'm not very far into that. We are going to be going on a trip before too long. I will probably only be taking my Kindle, so hopefully I'll be finishing that sometime in August. I'm also in the middle of reading Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I'm reading this with a book buddy, and I was really struggling with this. I read chapter 6, and then when I went to talk to her about it, I couldn't remember anything about chapter 6. So I read chapter 6 again, and I still couldn't have told you what it was about. So I started a third time. And then I got an audio version on Audible. So what I am doing now is I am listening to, I think it's Joanne Froggatt. She played Anna Bates on Downton Abbey. I'm listening to her read it to me while I am reading along. And that's helping me a lot. I was just having trouble figuring out who was who and what was going on. And I don't know why I was having so much trouble, but adding in the audiobook has been helping. So I'm finally making a little progress in that one. And then the last one that I'm fairly close to the end of, but not close enough that I'm going to finish it today, is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. It would help if I could remember titles, but I am listening to that on Audible, and it's read by Neil Gaiman. I started that back during swim season when I was staying in hotel rooms with little girls. I would just, when it was bedtime, put in my earbuds and listen to a chapter of the Norse mythology. But I think I still have maybe 2 or 3 chapters left to go. So one of these days I'll get that finished up. So those are the books I am currently reading that I didn't actually get through in July. So I'll talk more about those in my August wrap up. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Please feel free to comment below if you've read any of these books or if you have some book suggestions for me based on what I have read or am reading. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.